Poštovani gledatelji, dobrodošli u još jednu emisiju iz ciklusa DU-CHECK. Bavimo se provjerom informacija, bavimo se pitanjem koliko toga izlazi u medijima, na internetu i ostalim svim oblicima nekakvih dezinformacija. Proučavamo, družimo se sa znanstvenicima, profesorima, studentima, svim onim ljudima koji mogu nas naučiti kako biti pažljiviji, kako biti nekako oprezniji i kako svemu tome pristupiti u modernom 21. stoljeću sa multimedijom koja nam dolazi bilo preko mobitela, bilo preko televizije i drugih nekakvih oblika medija. Danas je sa nama profesor Barredo sa Sveučilišta u Malagi u Španjolskoj. Hello, and it's really nice to have you here in Dubrovnik. I'm really lucky that we will have 25 to 30 minutes to talk about. Thank you, Daniel, for coming.
Thank you very much, Žarko. This is a pleasure for me to stay in this beautiful city, and I'm really honored to participate in your program.
I told in Croatian at the very start of the podcast that we will talk like in every other podcast about the media, about the disinformation that is coming through the digital media, through the newspapers, through the let's say old-fashioned journalism teams and everything that is on the internet, in the whole digital world that we are living today, and you have a lot of experience. So I will ask you about the differences that you see even in other countries, because you told me that after Dubrovnik you are going to Madrid, right?
Yes.
That you will also have the same themes and subjects there with our colleagues, and it's really nice to learn a little bit from you and to present to our viewers and listeners on UNIDU TV and radio. What are your opinions?
Well, thank you very much. At the beginning, the internet was actually considered like a space for freedom of expression. If you look at the literature that it was published during the 90s and at the beginning of the 2000 years, everybody was thinking that the internet was, emerged in order to liberate us from the traditional media. Everybody was talking about the citizen journalism, and I remember the work of Manuel Castells, the famous sociologist, that he was saying that the cybersphere was the networks of anger, but also of hope. But after the 2000 years, from the 2007 on, we have an appropriation of the cybersphere from organizational and institutional purposes. So the cybersphere is not safe. That's the first thing, because certain governments and certain organizations are using it in order to promote certain products or even to spread this information, which is information planned in order to imitate or to replicate the normal information structures, but with a spurious aim. So, and this is actually dangerous. Dangerous, why? First of all, because it's very easy to create this information nowadays. If you go to the ChatGPT, you can just prompt it, and in 20 seconds you will get this informative product. Secondly, it's very easy actually to spread this information. So, and this is a really big problem, because every individual can actually ask to the ChatGPT to create, for example, a social bot, or either to create a strategy very complex in order to spread it. The third point is that this information is harming the people. So we can see that in specific vulnerable collectives, as for example, the teenagers and the children, that they are getting this information, but not only, they are getting this social media consumed, and this is actually affecting to their or this is actually creating psychological disorders. So we are in a very complex scenario. If we look at this scenario in Europe, there are some traces of hope. There are two main European laws which were approved in the last 2 years, which are the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act, that they are actually trying to create an internet and a cybersphere much more horizontal, much more collective, much more respectful. They are trying to stop this hate speech. They are trying to avoid this polarization among the political groups. But still there is much road to go, because we don't exactly know if this laws are going to be enough to stop these new narratives. But in other countries, as for example in Latin America, where those are countries that they don't have like a common reality as we have in the European Union, this is even much more difficult, because to combat disinformation requires heavy investments, and those countries, they don't have this money in the budget to invest, for example, to hire like specific troops within the army in order to stop this disinformation tactics. But they at the same time, they don't have like a normative corpus in order to combat this. So yes, we are in a very difficult scenario of the contemporary media ecosystem.
When it's all about the hate of speech, something came into my mind, because in the last few weeks, even at something that looks like a very simple thing and very simple subject, like Eurovision, here in Croatia, was polarizing a lot of people, and I saw a lot of hate of speech on the social media, because a lot of people wanted to Croatian singer to be a winner, and he didn't do that at the end, and then all together came to one big downward spiral. And I didn't have any comments about that, and I don't have an opinion. I'm looking at that part of showbiz. It's something that has to make us fun and to watch one event on the TV. But even in this situation where it's very easy, it's not politics, it's not economics, it's not war, it's not like the biggest thing in the world that is happening for a person, but altogether, even in these situations, we saw that in several days and several weeks, it all came down on really big downward spiral, and it started to gain a lot of speech that is very bad to the other singers and to other nations. It's becoming very polarized.
Yes, and we have to understand the polarization. It has its roots, but it's a very complex, but it has its roots mainly in the way that the algorithms of the social media are being configured. For example, when you open up an account on Facebook or either Twitter, or you are following certain sources. So the point is, you are receiving and you are being exposed to certain contents instead of others, and this is creating what some experts, they call it a filter bubble. That is, we are living in those bubbles because we are not exposing to the contrary opinion, and this is actually boosting this feeling of a polarized society, which is happening all around the world. The second thing is that those cyber troops that I was commenting at the beginning, that are like specialized teams inside of certain communication departments in order to spread this information, they have also a tactic which is called echo chamber, which is that they repeat the same speech in certain groups in order to position certain candidates, leaders, or either parties. So if you combine these filter bubbles, so that is, we are receiving the same sources all around the time, and we are excluding all those friends who have a different opinion. But if you combine that with the echo chambers, which is a tactic that is creating these echoes all around this one leader or one organization, we actually feeling really separate as a society, because we are not trying to understand the contrary opinion, and this is actually very harmful. We can realize that certain political leaders are using this polarization in order to position a very simple speech. Probably those leaders, like a few decades ago, when all the public opinion was mediated by the traditional media, those leaders were not actually winning elections, because the media, the media workers were filtering certain simple speeches. But nowadays, those leaders, those populist leaders, they have the opportunity actually to position narratives directly to the electors, and this is actually causing that the society is not receiving like a well-informed, like different points of views around the same topic. This is happening with Eurovision, of course, but this is also happening with the electoral processes all around the world, and And sometimes this is, I think, a dangerous path, because through these online spaces, they are positioning some speeches in a very simple way that they are hiding other like complex realities. For example, if we face a problem like the immigration, or we face a problem as the environment, or either if we face the common goals of the Sustainable Development Goals, which were approved by the United Nations, we still find some politicians that they are against those global agendas. And so yes, there is so much to think about that, and I think that polarization, it has to be one of the most dangerous social scenarios, especially for the electoral processes.
We talk a little bit the same themes and subjects before recording on the coffee break, and we also touched a little bit the problem of TikTok in China and how America, United States of America, is trying to forbid for the last several months, maybe even year, because they are very in fear that the China government is trying to spy and take some information from this social media. How you are looking on those kind of, let's say, copies of WhatsApp and other social digital applications that are connecting people, and how you are looking on those things? Did you have any information and research in that field?
Yes, well, in the case of China, at the end of the 90s, they decided to create what is called the Great Technological Wall. That is, every Western company which was not collaborating with the Chinese state, they were pushed away. So, and then they replaced all those Western companies with a national concept companies. For example, WhatsApp is not existing in China, or either like Facebook, because those companies, those Western companies, were not collaborating with these national ideas in China. But they replaced them with WeChat, for example, which is actually quite modern, and in general, I would say, it even includes more functions than our like Western social media platforms. So the point is, in the case of TikTok, this is a Chinese company that is split into two different companies. One is only for China. Then there is another logic behind of it, because we also have to understand that in the Chinese context, the social media and in general the cybersphere is not only more controlled than in the European or in the Western world, but is even actually forward than us. The technological tools are quite important in China. First of all, to control the people, of course. I mean, we are talking about a country with more than 1 billion people, so this is very difficult to manage, to handle all the possibilities, you know, like in terms of crimes and so on. But secondly, they are using this like as a part of their daily routines. For example, in China, nobody is using like really notes or coins. They are using like WeChat to pay everything. Or they are like using these technologies not only to communicate, but also to find a work and so on. So yes, in the case of TikTok, we don't really know what's going to happen. Yes, we know that all the social media platforms, they are like gating all the data in two ways. First of all, they are getting the narrative data. For example, when we post a picture or when we post a text on these platforms, all this data is being like stored, and they are using this information for this promotion tactics. But secondly, we are collecting all the structural data that, for example, when we are consuming a website or a video, in the case of TikTok, all this data is being classified inside of the cookies, and these cookies are again using this information in order to get a really precise marketing campaigns, because all the social networks, they are being funded by these promotion campaigns. They are using these individualized tactics of promotion. So we don't know again what's going to happen with TikTok, but there are like some precedent historical interactions that, in the case, for example, of the China, they push away these companies. So I mean, the Western world could actually decide to do the same. But we will see how can the US justify this in the case that they finally decide to cancel TikTok, because we are not in the same moment than 30 years ago, where the social media did not have this big extension as they have nowadays.
We also talked before the show about the differences that are coming from country to country, and you were lucky enough to see a lot of world, and you were living in Latin America for several years, in Colombia and Ecuador. And how are the differences in the media, in the journalism, in the university research field from country to country? Because here in Croatia we have one system, in Spain you have a little bit another, but it's all under the European Union. How are things working there?
Yes, I was really lucky because I could work in Latin America, 3 years in Ecuador, 7 years in Colombia. Those are really, I would say, really complex scenarios. First of all, because those little countries, well, in the case of Ecuador, it's a little country. Colombia is not a little country; it's a big country actually. But those countries, as they don't belong to this international union of countries like in the European Union, they face really difficult problems. For example, we know that this information is being spread by parts of the army of superpowers. We know that China or Russia, they are using their influence and their tactics in order to spread this information in electoral processes in those countries. But also the US is doing the same. So the point is, for example, if we look at the last Colombian presidential elections, we found like there was a social network which was spreading news against Gustavo Petro, who is the current president, but there were also another social network which was trying to position like one of the right conservative leaders. So yes, and in those countries, their resources are scarce. So that is, they really don't have like enough tools to combat disinformation. There are not even rules or norms approved currently to combat this. Well, in the case of the universities and the research departments, there is another problem that the countries are not investing enough. So, for example, in the case of Colombia, most of their research projects are being funded by the private universities. The government still has like some special funds to do this, but they are scarce in general. So the point is complex for the researchers there, like to engage into a project and to get like a platform to study this kind of movements. And if we look at the working conditions of the journalists, they are really difficult and precarious. Some of the journalists in Colombia, they get, imagine this, about 600 euros a month. So that is a really low payment. And if we combine these precarious conditions with other factors, the situation is really bad. For example, if some of these journalists that they are like getting really low payments, they are like facing really low professionalization within the media organizations. They also have a lot of pressures. For example, when we talk about the drug trafficking, because in certain regions in Colombia that they are producing these drugs, and as everybody knows, the journalists, they don't know what topics are linked to these drug trafficking and to the cartels, because the drugs sometimes are behind of other corruption topics, and that makes them like really vulnerable collectives. So that's why I think we should try to create projects here in Europe. There are some ongoing projects, but we should try to create projects within a comparative scope in order to help the situation and to denunciate with more resources that we have in the European Union.
We started the conversation with the freedom of speech on internet and digital media, that it's it was intended to be. But after this full circle, I'm getting a feeling that today is even less freedom of speech, because all of those brave journalists and people around the world that would like to say or to explore some themes and subjects and all that is happening behind the scenes, even in drug field or other crimes and politics. But if they do, they have such a low payment and they are easy to find, because today with all of those applications, all the digital connections that you have with GPS and everything, they are very easy to target.
Yes, that's true. Well, it's true also that in the last decade we have seen like an emergence of authoritarian leaders in many parts of the world, and this is establishing a climate of lesser freedom of speech in general. But in the other hand, the digital technologies are being used also for protection. For example, when we made a project with some colleagues in Mexico about those journalists who are covering this news about the drugs, and they were telling us that they are using certain tactics with the technologies to protect themselves. For example, when they go to somewhere, they publish that on the social media, so then everybody knows that they are in that place, and maybe this can help that they are not going to be attacked. Or, for example, they show all the possible links or that they have with when they are going to interview somebody. So then the cartel is not using this information in order to attack their reputation, which is actually happening sometimes. So yes, technology has always this double face. They could be used as to protect, for example, in the case of the media workers, to protect their work, even to find like some spaces. For example, in Latin America, there is a huge emergence of digital native organizations, or media organizations, because some journalists, they have two options, basically. This is a very simple way to present it, but they have two options. First of all, to join a media organization where they are going to receive really low salaries and really bad working conditions in general, or they can even become entrepreneurs and create their own media. So we have like many new media which are ruled by 3 journalists. They were studying together. They are using the technologies that to get like a lower or to reduce the price of the information production, and then they can survive with this. So they still have most of them, these low salaries, but at least they are doing what they want. So the point is, if you look at, for example, Sembra Media, which is an international organization that is a database for these online media organizations, you can see that in every Latin American country there is a huge emergence of these new outlets. And this is actually optimistic. But in the other way, technologies, they are also being used in order to manipulate and control public opinion all around the world, to establish or to promote certain, even foreign ideas within the electoral processes from these superpowers, or either like to stop certain currents of opinion around this or that topic, or either to polarize, to create these echo chambers or filter bubbles that I was trying to explain at the beginning. And yes, so it depends in the way that you are looking at the technologies. And I think that one thing which would be very important is that all the countries, they boost not only the regulation of the online media, but also the media literacy. I think that this is very urgent, that in the schools and in the secondary education, there is a special subject related to this media literacy, because not only as a specific topic within these subjects about social sciences. No. This is only a topic which is trying to explain the children and the teenagers that they have to be responsible and how to behave in front of the media.
You as a researcher, how much of help are artificial intelligence, digital applications, and in this field, is it much of help, or you are just keeping away from, let's say, ChatGPT, as we mentioned it at the very beginning of the interview. Do you see an opportunities to be helpful for the researchers, or it's really something that you are not going into it?
I think that the artificial intelligence is a marvelous tool because we can use it in order to combine other processes. Of course, we cannot rely in all the content produced by the ChatGPT. That's actually very dangerous because some contents are not reliable or precise. But if we use this tool, for example, to edit certain articles, either to guide us to translate certain things, or either to present a structure of one specific topic, I think this is actually, as I say, a wonderful tool. But of course, the ChatGPT and the artificial intelligence, again, there are some gaps that should be filled with new regulations, as for example the European Union did with this law on artificial intelligence. Imagine, we can create now a really harmful content easily without a really deep knowledge of certain technologies, and this can cause enormous negative effects on certain people. I give you an example. 3 days ago, one of my neighbors called me because he was so worried that his daughter was presenting his daughter is under 18 years old, and she was presented with this deep fake video that is somebody took a picture of her and somebody presented her in a sexual scenario, and this is actually really harmful because he asked me what tools do we have to combat this, because this is actually this can create mental or social disorders.
Big problems.
And well, we cannot just say, okay, the AI, this is just a simple tool to play, to do this and that. No, this is a very powerful tool. So under the bad hands, this can actually create chaos, social chaos. So hopefully, I think in the next years we will have a more developed AI tools, but also we will have a more developed AI combat or against AI, so to detect, for example, these deep fakes or to stop them, as it was, for example, with the disinformation contents. Nowadays we have fact-checking units really good, as the one that is being managed by the University of Dubrovnik. That is actually a good example that we can use fact-checking in order to combat the spread of disinformation, and hopefully in the next year we will have the same with the AI tools.
What are your plans? I mentioned that you are going to Madrid, and after the Dubrovnik we are really lucky to have you here. What are your plans for the next for the 2024 at the end?
Yes, I'm going to Madrid to participate in an international conference about also disinformation. At the moment, I'm leading 2 projects. One project is about big data. We have created a crawler in order to scrap the data from 1,700 online media in 19 Spanish-speaking countries. And now we are using this tool, you see, in a really powerful way in order to establish comparisons between different countries. But I'm also leading a second project about media consumed, children, and suicide ideation. That is, we want to understand why in the last 2 years the Spanish children have committed at least 2 times more rates of suicide than in the past. So media consumed could be one of the reasons behind of this, because suicide is a very complex phenomenon, but we are trying to explain how media consumed could affect this and how to prevent this situation. So I'm going to South Korea to present the results in July, and then in August I'm going to Peru because I'm also president of ICOMTA, which is a conference about communication and applied technologies, and this year is going to be held in Lima in Peru. So we are really excited with this. And then after that I have to teach at the University of Malaga. So finally I will be from September to December lecturing at my university, but at the same time I want to design a project within a comparative scope, and hopefully I can continue collaborating with the University of Dubrovnik, because I really found a really dynamic, young, and enthusiastic team. And I'm so excited with this to continue this collaboration in the future. There are many interesting things about Croatia and in general the Eastern countries, and we should try to get closer, to the Mediterranean countries as Spain, but also Latin America. Latin America, they are not Mediterranean, but they still have like many attributes which are very similar. So it would be very interesting to create this comparative project and to establish an institutionalization of this collaboration for the future.
Dear Daniel, thank you for all the information and your thoughts about all of the subjects that we passed in the last 30 minutes. And I wish you all the luck in your professional and personal life and all the travels around the world. And I hope so we will have another meeting, not maybe in front of the camera, but when you are in Dubrovnik, just to take more introspective views through the time and in the next years that are very, very interesting. And it's coming for all of us to adapt and to research and to be smarter in the learning processes.
Thank you very much, Žarko. For me, this was, as I told you at the beginning, an honor to stay here. And of course, we can talk whenever you want. And thanks very much to the University of Dubrovnik for this opportunity. And especially to the Professor Mato Brautović, that he's actually an excellent researcher, and I hope we can continue this collaboration.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Poštovani gledatelji i slušatelji, bio je to Daniel Barredo, profesor sa Sveučilišta u Malagi, čovjek sa puno iskustva. Ja se nadam da smo vam približili neka od njegovih prijašnjih iskustava i viđenja cijele situacije koje se događaju u medijima, u novinarstvu i sa cijelim fact-checkingom u kojemu se mi bavimo u DU-CHECK-u. Evo, u svakoj od idućih emisija ćemo također ugostiti stručnjake iz polja novinarstva i naravno provjere informacija. Ostanite uz program UNIDU TV-a i u UNIDU radija. Mi gledamo se u nekoj od idućih emisija i također slušamo.